So we're up to Kuf Tzadites. We are doing the chapter on tshuva. We're about 2/3 of the way through. And there's a list of 20 things which are essential for tshuva. A list of 20 things which are essential for tshuva. I won't enumerate all of them now. I don't remember them by heart. I'd have to go through the text. But we're up to number 15. Okay? So let's do then Kuf Tzadites. Chamishasar, Hatfilah, prayer. A person who transgresses should pray to Hashem, v'yivakesh me'es Hashem Baruch Hu, and he should pray and request from Hashem, shi'azrehu al tshuvasoi, we should help him with his tshuva, v'yiftach lo sharei tahara, which is exactly what you said the other day when we met downstairs and we had a little impromptu talk on tshuva. I think it was you who said, what should one do when he finds that he transgresses? He does tshuva, transgresses, does tshuva, transgresses, does tshuva. Now, the answer I was looking for was, try again, but he said pray. Which is also part of trying. Yeah? Very important part of trying. To pray, pray to Hashem and ask for help in order to do proper tshuva. I mean, it makes perfect sense if we're encouraged to pray to Hashem for our livelihood. Encouraged to pray to Hashem to find our proper soulmate and all the other things that are very important to us in life. Right? Certainly, we should pray to Hashem to help us find the proper path to tshuva. It says, Orchot b'dei shamayim, chutz miyat shamayim. Yirat shamayim is something that depends on you. That's exactly right. Since Yirat shamayim depends on me, I'm praying to ask for it. So that's ishtadlus. That one answer, one sentence. That's Orchot b'dei shamayim, chutz miyat shamayim. Yirat shamayim, it's dependent on you. But one of the tools that you have to attain Yirat shamayim is to pray for it. Right? You can't just let it go. That's one thing. Another thing is that, what else was I thinking? That you're not asking for the Yirat shamayim that you're trying to attain. What you're asking for is help in overcoming this difficulty. So, Orchot b'dei shamayim, chutz miyat shamayim, is you're not asking Hashem, please give me a shamayim. What do you mean, Hashem, give me your shamayim? You want your shamayim? Work on it. That's something else. We're not talking about asking for your shamayim here. We're asking Hashem to help us do tshuva. Help us find the right path to tshuva. Help us overcome transgressing. Right? So that's not Yirat shamayim per se. You're asking Hashem to help you in some practical, tangible way attain the thing that you want, which is to be able to do tshuva. The second explanation that I wanted to suggest here is that you're not asking for Yirat shamayim. You're asking for help to attain something that you want because of Yirat shamayim. Yirat shamayim causes you to want to have a good parnasa so that you can pay for all the mitzvahs that you have to do and send your children to private Jewish education and everything else. Right? So the Yirat shamayim is defining for you what you want. Now you're praying to praying to Hashem to help you attain that. Same thing as well. The Yirat shamayim, right, is...
What does Yirat shamayim mean?
The fear of Hashem.
Okay.
Yeah. Is fueling my desire to want to do tshuva, to repair the things that I've done wrong. So I'm asking Hashem now to help me attain that goal, which has been defined by Yirat shamayim. I'm not asking for Yirat shamayim. It's my Yirat shamayim which is defining for my goal. Now I ask Hashem to help me achieve that. That's okay. Okay? Person's Yirat shamayim is defining the fact that he wants a certain type of wife, a certain type of soulmate. So Hashem, please help me find this type of woman, so I can raise together with her a family which will glorify your name and increase Torah. Hashisha Asar, the 16th, Tikkun Ame'uvas, is repairing what has been perverted. Shitaken kol ma she'ives, he should make every effort to rectify everything that he has wronged. Kogonim gazal la'adam, for example, if he stole money from someone, Yashiv ha'gzela, kodem evidui, he should return that which he stole before starting the tshuva process. What's he going to say? Hashem, please forgive him for stealing. He still got a hold of this item. So what? What's he asking Hashem tshuva for? Now, once he's returned it, he's rectified the wrong, now he can ask Hashem to forgive him for having done that wrong. V'im gozol es ha'odam ve'eno lifroya. If he stole from somebody and he can't pay back, yispalel Elokim shiten lo hasogas yad shifra. He should pray to Hashem that he should give him the wherewithal to pay back what he's stolen. This is combining both here 15 and 16, giving an example of how you can introduce prayer into the idea. If a person's, let's say, stolen something from somebody, or he's damaged someone, or alternatively, he might have stolen or taken advantage of or misused funds or belongings of the community, so there's really no specific person to pay back, so what does he do there? So we're told that a person who has stolen or depleted the public coffers in any way, but he doesn't have any way of really restoring to the general populace or to any individual he might have harmed among the community. He doesn't, for example, even know who it is, perhaps. So what he should do is use his money to do something which will be of benefit to the entire community, so that this way anyone of the community who uses it will get back what he's taken from them indirectly. And if it's a specific individual, he doesn't know which one, the intention is that hopefully that person will also somehow benefit from what this person's done, so that he's repaid in that way. So, let's say somebody has taken something from somebody he doesn't know, and now he wants to do tshuva, he has to return it, but he doesn't know to whom to return it. So he's told, use his money to set up, for example, some public project which will benefit people with the hope, and then pray that the person who he actually stole from will use this thing that he's done. Right? We'll get some kind of benefit from this thing that he's established. That might be a public loaning fund. It might be some other type of an organization, or some other form of venue through which he helps the community, or anything like that. But when he's actually stolen something, he's got to return the object, make the best effort he can to return the object to its rightful owner before he can do tshuva. Because there are two parts to every transgression of this nature. There's the part vis-a-vis God. God says don't steal. But there's also the part vis-a-vis the person who he's stolen from. So God said, you want to do tshuva and having stolen, that's fine. But you have to rectify what you've stolen first. And the same thing, if you've offended somebody, God said, you want me to forgive you? You have to ameliorate your friend first. Placate that person for having offended him. Once you've placated him, then there's another story. If you've offended somebody, you've spoken meanly to somebody, you've embarrassed somebody, you've harmed somebody verbally one way or the other, you're required to go and say to that person, I apologize, please forgive me. And the person's required to forgive. The person says, I don't want to forgive you. You hurt me very much. I'm very offended. I was embarrassed. I don't forgive you. So you're required to go back to him again. Bringing all the people that you embarrassed him in front of. Saying to him, I admit in front of all of these people that I wronged you. It was a misjustice. I apologize. I feel bad about it. I regret it. I'm going to try my very best not to do that type of thing to you or anybody else again. Please, in front of all these people, please. No. I don't want to forgive you. Yeah. So you're required to go back again and ask for him forgiveness. Yeah? Forgiveness. If he doesn't accept, so I think you're 3 times, I believe. Then you bring a present, try and approach him in the presence of 10 and ask his forgiveness, and if he still won't forgive, so you've done what you can, and the rest is on the transgression is on him. If you've sincerely, if you've sincerely, if you've sincerely requested forgiveness, you're also required to ask forgiveness of somebody who you wronged even after they've died, after their death. Suppose you've wronged somebody, and by the time you get around to doing tshuva, they're already gone. They're 6 feet under. What do you do then? So you're supposed to go to the gravesite and ask forgiveness of the person the soul is believed to be there, have some connection with the person who's buried. And therefore you're required to ask forgiveness of this person. What's that? 10 people. Yeah. Very commonly, during a formal, burial, funeral service, the people who are responsible for, the functionaries responsible for the actual running of the burial ceremony, at some point will, the Kadisha, will, ask on behalf of themselves and anybody else is there, collective forgiveness from, to the dead person for anything they might have done wrong, and that would be an opportunity for somebody to, verbalize, if not, audibly for everybody to hear, but at least verbalize, if not verbalize, at least think about, try and commune in some way, communicate even mentally, but ideally verbally, that I've wronged you in this way, and I forgive. I feel very bad about it. Please forgive me. Upon your departure and so forth and so on. I ask forgiveness that we didn't get around to asking the person forgiveness earlier. These types of things happen very often among family members. You might have had some animosity, competition, jealousies during their lifetime, and then only after death does a person say, wow. And then it's too late.
So, quick question, back to the idea of praying as a form of tshuva. And you said, are you praying for the capability to not commit the tshuva, the act that you did that was wrong, or are you praying for for God to help you work on the things that caused you to commit that act?
I think it could be both. Okay. Yeah, I think the idea is both. That yes, you pray to Hashem to help him, overcome the temptation to transgress again, and also to show him the proper path of tshuva, so that he should properly regret it and rectify it in the right way, and be connected to the right people and learn the right things to strengthen, bolster his belief and his practice, and many, many different things. Both in refraining from transgression and also proactively becoming better. Hashiva Asar, the 17th. Lirdof pulas chesed v'ha'emes, to pursue activities of loving kindness, charity, and truth. Shenemar, as it says, bechesed ve'emes yichupar avoin. Through chesed, kindness, and emes, truth, yechupar, sin will be atoned for. So a person can atone for sin through acts of loving kindness and truth. Maybe the truth is referring here to the Torah. The Torah is also truth. If a transgressor did not return to Hashem, then these kind acts will not help. It's not like he transgressed, and instead of tshuva, he says, I'll do good deeds. No, the good deeds only help to atone for what was done wrong when the person does tshuva. He's done tshuva. So now God is not going to hold that act against him, but he still has to atone for the actual harm that he's caused, for the spiritual transgression. And that he can do through, it would be like bringing a sacrifice in times of old. If a person were bringing a sin offering, the act of bringing the sacrifice is not going to atone for the sin, only if he does tshuva. Right? Tshuva with the sacrifice brings about the atonement. And so too here, tshuva with the chesed is what's needed. Lo yiskaber avano before the chesed. It says in the verse in Dvorim, Asher do yisaf fanim v'lo yikach sheichad. God will not show favoritism and will not take bribery. Which means, as explained by the sages here, Lo yikach sheichad limchol al hamitzvos ula'avir al ha'avonos. God will not take bribery to forego the lack of a person's observance or to look over the actual transgressions. And that's what's meant by this verse here. It's talking about Balei Tshuva. There are certain transgressions where a person is required to do tshuva, and even after tshuva and the actual atoning quality of Yom Kippurim, the transgressions are still only suspended. But they need further treatment in order to be nullified. And that would include Yisurin Mimarakin, suffering will actually purify and soften the residual transgression. So that a person would actually need tshuva, Yom Kippur, and suffering. For some, tshuva is alone. For some, you need tshuva Yom Kippur. For some, tshuva Yom Kippur is not enough. You need also suffering. V'nei chesed magen ba'ad achoyte, but acts of loving kindness, which are associated with, which accompany tshuva, yishmor alav min yisurim, they can actually guard the person from having this suffering. Gam yitzilenu min hamaves, and also protect him from death. It says, Utzedaka tatzil mimaves, that charity can save a person from death. That's what he's saying here. That there are certain transgressions which are quite serious. Tshuva and Yom Kippur are not alone, are not enough. That only suspends a person's judgment. He would actually have to undergo some type of suffering to atone for that transgression. It's at this point that acts of kindness will help mitigate that transgression. Yeah, that would be a time when that's when it would be relevant, right? And that's not considered to be bribing God. Why? Because the person sincerely is doing tshuva. Right? The bribery comes about when it's not really justified. That's what bribery, generally speaking, it's not really justified. Since it's not justified, I'm asking the person to overlook the fact that I'm not really justified, and therefore I'm paying him off. That's not the case here. The case here is he's justifiably asking for forgiveness because he's done tshuva. He's rectified what needs to be rectified. But this act might be so severe that in addition to all of that, he should also suffer. It's that suffering which can be mitigated by doing acts of loving kindness. Okay? It's not bribery.
You can say it's almost it's not suffering doing kindness, but it's like taking up your time and it's
yeah, that's interesting.
It's not burden because let's say you're happy to do it, but it's not convenient. It's not the first thing that one would choose. So
yeah,
it's almost.
It could be that if a person's not happy to do it, it might. If a person's not happy to do it, in this case, it might even actually be more. It might be more beneficial to him, for the reasons that you're saying. And I never quite thought about it that way. That it's a burden. It's a different. To do chesed is a burden. It's difficult. So you can either be burdened with suffering or burdened with doing good for others. So it'd probably be better to be burdened with doing good for others than to suffer. So it's I never actually thought about that point. Maybe it's
not easy. It's not easy. I don't want to say that it's suffering.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying not to avoid to say.
Yeah. It's like Kol Mekabel Alav Ol Mitzvos Ma'avir Alav Ol Malchus. A person who takes upon himself the yoke of the commandments, so metaphysically speaking, God, as it were, takes away from this person the obligations of, let's say, of the government or something like that. But which means to say, a person has to have some type of yoke. If you take upon himself the yoke of heaven, so it exempts him from having the yoke imposed upon him in some other direction. So here too as well, he's got to have some suffering. So if he takes upon the suffering of helping others, he suffers in order to help others, so that will exempt him from suffering, and that suffering will mitigate the punishments. It's quite interesting. I mean, the way I always thought about it was more like, if he transgressed, it was probably out of some perception of doing so in his self-interest, and therefore helping others rectifies that element of self-interest by actually helping others. But I like your explanation very much. So he says here, V'od yash avan chil Hashem, there's another form of transgression which is actually quite severe, which is a desecration of God's name. Doing or acting in a way which is going to cause people to disparage God. That's called chilul Hashem, desecrating God's name. So regarding that transgression, Hatshuva Yom Kippurim v'Yisurim Tolim, all three are needed just to suspend the judgment, that is Tshuva, Yom Kippur, and the suffering. And Misa Mimerekes, death, that's what kind of totally nullifies any residual element of that transgression. Question number says, "Im yechupar avoin hazeh lechem ad tamusun." Isaiah says in the name of God, yes, kind of like, I make an oath, I reveal in God's name that you will not be forgiven for this transgression of desecrating God's name until you die. It will be atoned for through death, but only at death. When a person makes every effort to hold on to, maintain commitment to the path of truth, and he also supports people of truth, and he elevates them, and he does everything he can to control, to isolate, to reduce the power of people who espouse falsehood. Hine ele darke kiddush Hashem. This is a way of sanctifying God's name, and that will rectify, therefore, the chilul Hashem without dying. And this is what he means to say that chesed ve'emes yichupar avon. Hesed will take care of the transgressions where a person needs tshuva and Yom Kippur, and suffering will get rid of it. So he does chesed to mitigate that suffering. The very serious transgressions in which tshuva, Yom Kippur, and suffering are needed to suspend, and it's only fully reconciled after death, that can be dealt with through what he calls emes, meaning upholding the truth, and doing everything he can to diminish, to weaken falsehood, so that will bring about a kiddush Hashem, and therefore take place of Haz Hashem, the need for death to fully atone for these sins. Vine kisheyorer odam v'midas ha'emes, when a person stirs up this quality of truth, az yisalach loy avon achilul im hatshuva, then he will be forgiven for this transgression of desecrating God's name together with the tshuva. So even if a person does something very, very serious, such as chilul Hashem, he can still have tshuva, Yom Kippur, suffering, and then doing everything he can to be as truthful and supporting the truth as possible to actually atone for the chilul Hashem, and not have to wait till death. Okay. The 18th, Mordechai on page Resh. Hashmonas are the 18th. Shehiyeh chata'av negdoi tomid v'lo yishkach oisam. His transgression should be before him always, and he should not forget them. It says, Kip sh'ai ani eda v'hatosi negdi tamid. David Melech says, my transgressions I will know, and my sins will be before me always. So according to this, a person should always be cognizant of his transgressions. And that will have the benefit of reminding him that he needs to do tshuva, reminding him that he is not an angel, he is full of transgression, giving him humility in order to enable him to be more subservient to Hashem. A person should be thinking about this regularly so that he does not forget to do tshuva on it, and also that he should be wary, since he's aware of transgressing and he hasn't forgotten, then he'll be wary of not doing it again, not falling in the pitfall of doing it again. But of course, if a person, if he's constantly contemplating the things that he does wrong and his shortcomings, comes to a state of apathy or even depression, so that would be debilitating and therefore obviously counterproductive. That's not the point. The point is, he should regularly remember the things that he's done wrong, in order to remember to do tshuva on them, in order to be wary of the pitfalls that might be waiting for him, and in order to remind himself that he's not perfect, and that will teach him to walk humbly before Hashem. But he has to be careful that this should not be the point where, like you said, he loses hope, he loses faith, he becomes upset, he becomes morose, he loses his enthusiasm and his passion in doing the mitzvahs. Once this type of thing becomes debilitating, so it's counterproductive, and therefore he shouldn't do it. And therefore, it's often said that a person should set aside a certain part of his day in order to contemplate these things, in which case at that time he can become very upset and regret and cry and shout out to Hashem in remorse over things that he's done wrong. But the rest of the day he should be in a state of joy, state of happiness. Otherwise, if a person gets broken, he's not going to make any progress. Okay, Hatisha Asar, the 19th. Ziva Sechet. The leaving behind of the transgression. And when the transgression, the opportunity to transgress, presents itself again, and he becomes full of desire to do it, stop himself and say, no. Ezu Baal Tshuva, Asher Tshuvasu Maga'as Ad Kisei HaKavod, whose tshuva is so great that it reaches up to the throne of heaven. Zeu asher nivchan v'yotza noki b'oisai perek v'oisai makom v'oisai isha. It's that person who was challenged at the same time of year, the same season, and the same time, same place, and the same woman. Yeah, we mentioned it the other day in the talk downstairs. Shuvas Mishkal, I called that. Perush kishiz damen achet liado v'hu pasaychev yitzro. The transgression makes itself available to him again, and he is at the height of his desire. But he suppresses that desire, he overcomes it now in the honor of Hashem. If it didn't come to him again, so that he's not able to demonstrate to himself and to Hashem that he's done tshuva by overcoming it, Yosef benafsho yiras Hashem baruch hu tavar yom b'yomo. He can't demonstrate, therefore, his ability to overcome this because it doesn't come his way, and he shouldn't be asking for it to come his way either. What should he do? He should be praying each day. He should be making every effort each day to grow more and more and more in his fear of God, and this way attain the very highest level of tshuva possible. But that can certainly happen. A person has got this overwhelming, uncontrollable desire for McDonald's double-decker cheeseburgers. And every time he goes by McDonald's, his mouth starts watering. So, at first he stops going into the restaurant, but he goes to the drive-thru. He doesn't want anybody to see him going into the restaurant, but he goes to the drive-thru and on the slide picks up a double-decker cheeseburger. Yeah. But then he does tshuva and he says, I'm not going to do that anymore. And he drives by McDonald's 10 times. On the 11th time, he drives through. He gets a cheeseburger. He's still got to do tshuva. So he says, you know what? I'm not going to drive by there anymore. I'm not going to even drive by there anymore. So somebody says, what kind of tshuva is that? You're going to avoid McDonald's in order to avoid getting the double-decker? If you really did tshuva, not only would you go through the drive-thru, you'd actually go into the restaurant and ask to use the bathroom instead of buying a cheeseburger. Demonstrate your tshuva. Yeah? No. That's wrong. Avoid driving by. Now if you avoid driving by 10 times a week for a year, then if you really do have to go inside for whatever reason, you'll have no interest whatsoever in doing the cheeseburger because you've overcome it properly. That's the point. Because if you're not challenged with it, then you should at least try and make yourself grow day by day by day by day by day, so that if you were ever challenged with it, you would be at the point where it would no longer be particularly challenging for you. Hayesrim. Lashiv Rabbi mi'ovon kasher tasig yadoi. The 20th. Yeah? The final, last ingredient for this particular list, because after this there's going to be another list. But this list, the last one, Esrim, Lahashiv Rabbi me'ovon asher tasig yado, to make every effort to bring other people back from transgression. Shneimar says, Shuvu v'hashivu mikol psha'echem. Return and make to return, or return and cause to return from all of your transgressions. Lamadnu shazeh mikarei tshuva. We learn that this is one of the essential ingredients of tshuva. v'ne'emar, it says, "Hocheach tochiach es hamisecha, v'lo alav chet." You shall surely rebuke your friend and not take upon yourself responsibility for his transgression. So that part of tshuva is rebuking other people from doing things which are wrong. Lamadnu shim lo yochichenu. We learn from this that if a person has in his ability to rebuke and cause somebody else, prevent somebody else from transgressing, and he doesn't do it, ya'anesh al chatav. He himself will be held responsible for the transgressions of the person who he could have prevented from sinning. You can't say, well, it's not me, it's not my business, I'm going to let him do it. No. Even if it's not you, but you have some bearing on this person, then it is your business. And if you don't make it your business, then Hashem's going to make it your business. You're going to be held responsible for what's been done wrong. David. And so David said, I will teach sinners your ways, and transgressors to you will return, meaning the transgressors will return to you. Why? Through David's teaching them the ways of Hashem. So that, right, connecting to tshuva is not only about doing tshuva for yourself, it's about helping other people do tshuva as well. It's the last, but also a very important part of tshuva. All right, so instead of starting the new list of 14, the list of 24 things. What's that? Yes. It's interesting, particularly in this chapter of tshuva, everything's been a list. And I see after the 24, there's another list. After the 24 things which prevent a person from doing tshuva, there's a list of 6 things which can stir a person's heart to tshuva. Wow. And then there's another list. 4 types of tshuva. It's quite a long section, huh?
10 days to do it.
But at this point, we don't have that much. Yeah, well, we'll do as much as we can. Like it says, Lo alecha malacha ligmor. Wow, it's really quite a long chapter. Okay.